Why is rollback netcode so hard in 3D fighting games? In short, everything is more complicated. 360-degree movement means rotational data. Hitbox collisions are now based on complex geometric volumes instead of just 2D rectangles. Rollback with all these mathematical calculations become a monumental task to make deterministic and performant. In simple terms, this means consistent and fast. Is there a way to solve this? Yes, there are many different methods and tricks, but I will be focusing on hitboxes and animations. But to start, here's a quote from Michael Stallone on implementing rollback in Injustice 2.
This is a huge one. This is a big deal. This feels like, of course, this is the way it should work. Design your game systems to drive visual state, not depend on it.
But what does this mean? First, I'm going to define two ways to implement hitboxes: animation-driven versus code-driven. For animation-driven, the game system depends on the visual state. Most modern 3D games use this approach or some type of hybrid. Hitboxes here are attached onto the limbs and bones in the animation of a character. In contrast, code-driven drives the visual state. Most modern 2D games use this. Here, the data for hitboxes are defined in the code and created when the character enters specific states. Again, but what does this mean? To show an example, here's a clip of my 2D game. Notice the character in yellow. He is punching and kicking whereas the opponent is getting hit as expected. At this point, it is impossible to tell if this is animation driven or code driven. However, here's the exact same combo, but the yellow guy is now in a permanent T-pose. He is no longer punching and kicking, yet the combo is still hitting the enemy exactly the same. This is proof that it is code-driven, because even though the yellow guy is not animating any punches, his hitbox data is executing exactly the same. The animations you saw in the first combo are all fake. They are just used for a visual representation for the human eye. The game is simply just a bunch of rectangles going ham on each other. So in animation-driven, animations control everything about the hitboxes. Hitboxes are tightly coupled to animations. This makes rollback extremely difficult. And this is difficult because the animation math on the skeleton, which includes blending, bones, inverse kinematics, physics, they're all very hard to make performant and deterministic. For code-driven hitboxes, animations are just a visual representation of the character. Hitboxes are completely decoupled from animations. Rollback is not easy still, but it is now practical. It becomes trivial now to run simulations for math in code with geometric primitives during rollback logic. Rollbacks are no longer needed for skeletons and animation. So how can 3D fighting games finally get real rollback netcode? They have to switch their hitbox implementation from animation-driven to 100% code-driven. I do want to specify that the animation-driven method can work, but if it entails having to resimulate skeletons multiple times per frame, it is extremely difficult. Doing the switch to code-driven would allow for deterministic and performant rollbacks. It works for 2D, and it can work for 3D if done correctly. What are the downsides though? This will be difficult for a 3D game, and it would require a complete rebuild costing thousands of hours for this initial conversion. If the game has over say 4,000 attacks, this could easily go into years and years and years of development time. Hitboxes will no longer be visually accurate as they are no longer tied to the skeleton of the characters. It is possible, but it would take a lot of manual programming of coordinates. Lastly, if this is a legacy game, the game's DNA will have to fundamentally change. The game will forever feel different when playing it. Thanks for listening. My name is Richard Nguyen, and my game I showed earlier is called Nguyen Functions, which has GGPO rollback netcode with 4 players at once. It's on Steam if you want to check it out. I work on coding just by myself on my spare time, and I do plan to work on a code-driven 3D version when I get the time and resources. Finally, here's a screenshot of the comparison table I made.